Hello, online pipe community. Ethan, Parsimonious Piper here, and I am together once again with,
Potter Piper.
and we are diving right into the very next of C.S. Lewis' Screwtape letters. Father Brian, take it away.
My dear Wormwood, when I told you not to fill your letters with rubbish about the war, I meant, of course, that I did not want to have your rather infantile rhapsodies about the death of men and the destruction of cities, insofar as the war really concerns the spiritual state of the patient. I naturally want full reports, and on this aspect you seem singularly obtuse. Thus, you tell me with glee that there is reason to expect heavy air raids on the town where the creature lives. This is a crying example of something I have complained about already, your readiness to forget the main point in your immediate enjoyment of human suffering. Do you not know that bombs kill men? Or do you not realize that the patient's death at this moment is precisely what we want to avoid? He has escaped the worldly friends with whom you tried to entangle him. He has fallen in love with a very Christian woman and is temporarily immune from your attacks on his chastity. And the various methods of corrupting his spiritual life, which we have been trying, are so far unsuccessful. At the present moment, as the full impact of the war draws near and his worldly hopes take a proportionately lower place in his mind, full of his defense work, full of the girl, forced to attend to his neighbors more than he has ever done before, and liking it more than he expected, taken out of himself, as the humans say, and daily increasing in conscious dependence on the enemy. He will almost certainly be lost to us if he is killed tonight. This is so obvious that I'm ashamed to write it. I sometimes wonder if you young fiends are not kept out on temptation duty too long at a time. If you are not in some danger of becoming infected by the sentiments and values of the humans among whom you work. They, of course, do tend to regard death as the prime evil and survival as the greatest good, but that is because we have taught them to do so. Do not let us be infected by our own agenda. I know it seems strange that your chief aim at the moment should be the very same thing for which the patient's lover and his mother are praying, namely his bodily safety. But so it is. You should be guarding him like the apple of your eye. If he dies now, you lose him. If he survives the war, there is always hope. The enemy has guarded him from you through the first great wave of temptations. But if only he can be kept alive, you have time itself for your ally. The long, dull, monotonous years of middle age prosperity or middle age adversity are excellent campaigning weather. You see, it is so hard for these creatures to persevere. The routine of adversity, the gradual decay of youthful loves and youthful hopes, the quiet despair, hardly felt as pain, of ever overcoming the chronic temptations with which we have again and again defeated them, the drabness which we create in their lives, and the inarticulate resentment with which we teach them to respond to it. All this provides admirable opportunities of wearing out a soul by attrition. If, on the other hand, the middle years prove prosperous, our position is even stronger. Prosperity knits a man to the world. He feels that he is finding his place in it, while really it is finding its place in him. His increasing reputation, his widening circle of acquaintances, his sense of importance, the growing pressure of absorbing and agreeable work build up in him a sense of being really at home on earth, which is just what we want. You will notice that the young are generally less unwilling to die than the middle aged and the old. The truth is that the enemy, having oddly destined these mere animals to life in his own eternal world, has guarded them pretty effectively from the danger of feeling at home anywhere else. That is why we must often wish long life to our patients. 70 years is not a day too much for the difficult task of unraveling their souls from heaven and building up a firm attachment to the earth. While they are young, we find them always shooting off at a tangent, even if we contrive to keep them ignorant of explicit religion, the incalculable winds of fantasy and music and poetry, the mere face of a girl, the song of a bird, or the sight of a horizon are always blowing our whole structure away. They will not apply themselves steadily to worldly advancement, prudent connections, and the policy of safety first. So inveterate is their appetite for heaven that our best method at this stage of attaching them to earth is to make them believe that earth can be turned into heaven at some future date by politics or eugenics or science or psychology or whatnot. Real worldliness is a work of time, assisted, of course, by pride, for which we teach them to describe the creeping death as good sense or maturity or experience. Experience, in the peculiar sense we teach them to give it, is by the by a most useful word. A great human philosopher nearly let our secret out when he said that where virtue is concerned, the experience is the mother of illusion. But thanks to a change in fashion, and also, of course, to the historical point of view, we have largely rendered his book innocuous. How valuable time is to us may be gauged by the fact that the enemy allows us so little of it. The majority of the human race dies in infancy. Of the survivors, a good many die in youth. It is obvious that to him, human birth is important chiefly as the qualification for human death, and death solely as the gate to that other kind of world. We are allowed to work only on a selected minority of the race, for what humans call a normal life is the exception. Apparently, he wants some, but only a very few, of the human animals with which he is peopling heaven to have had the experience of resisting us through the earthly life of 60 or 70 years. Well, there is our opportunity. The smaller it is, the better we must use it. Whatever you do, keep your patient as safe as you possibly can. Your affectionate uncle, Screwtape.
Well, he gives us a lot more to unpack in this than I really originally thought. Let's start where he does. He's addressing the patient and the current war. This would be World War II. Wormwood, the nephew, doesn't seem to understand that the immediacy of danger in particularly in wars, in hardships, very often drives people toward quote unquote the enemy, God, rather than away from them. And in this case, Wormwood's patient has avoided the negative friendships that Wormwood tried to encourage. He is in love with a good Christian woman from a good Christian family. He is apparently under control of his sexual urges because his chastity is not in question right now. It's not even under attack. It's not at risk. He's cruising along in a comfortable but growing young Christian life. And here Wormwood is excited about the possibility of the area being bombed and etc. Screwtape reminds him, look, if he dies here, we lose him. The enemy, God, gets him. So what the best thing for us to do is to preserve his life. And here he transitions and talks about what happens to those of us who live a longer life. I'm 56. I certainly look at life a whole lot differently than I did in my 20s. The longer we live, if we become more affluent, not necessarily wealthy, but more comfortable, it's really easy for us to get attached to this world and forget that we're really made for another plane of existence. That's what we were created for. If we don't become more affluent, if on the other hand, we struggle the entire time throughout our lives, it can be very easy for the enemy to peel us away then from God and give us this notion that, well, he doesn't care. And so either way, the longer Screwtape is telling Wormwood, the longer you can keep your patient alive in this sense gives us more and more opportunity to either attach him to the world or to engender in him a deep despair. The problem comes in then for us as Christians in that we very easily forget. When I say we, I'm pointing to myself, not at you, that our citizenship, our true citizenship, is not in whatever country we reside in. I am not an American first. I'm a child of God first. And that means that my real residency, my real citizenship, uh, doesn't depend on votes for Democrats or Republicans. It depends entirely on the grace and mercy of God. And that citizenship should keep me focused on things that are important for his purpose instead of what's very easy for me, becoming attached to this world. Now, does that mean we're not supposed to enjoy this life? Of course not. Read the Bible. One of the things that God does so frequently to people who are faithful to him is to give them blessings and to give them joy and comforts in life. Doesn't mean we're all going to be, the next Elon Musk. We're not all going to be fabulously wealthy. In fact, some of us are going to be financially poor our whole lives. But God gives us blessings in ways that really are outside of human explanation and understanding. I know my grandparents were never wealthy; they were all joyful. Their faith in Christ did that for them. Our attachment to this world and the comforts that we have is a problem. Instead of being constantly conscious that the things we have, the ease with which the Western world lives, is a blessing from God, and not all places and times experience that. And Screwtape would really, really like for Wormwood's patient to live long enough to, like I said, to either get that attachment in really into him, or conversely, to somehow cause him to despair and fall away.
I thinking of the great Jewish theologian Billy Joel, who says only the good die young. And Lewis gives, through Screwtape, at least for myself, I think for many of us, really gives us something to think about as he kind of turns our thoughts, processes, and always kind of puts them on their head, where you would think that, the war is bad. And yeah, well, yes, war is bad. But yet when we think of what's Screwtape's desire, and it's to keep, and if we hear in this letter, it's like, I'd rather you keep, especially this particular patient, but it challenges all to think, keep him alive long. Let him, it's hard to persevere in this life. And the longer you can make us live, the greater opportunity he can keep trying to wear us down and keep us attached to this world. I'll joke in sermons and homilies to everybody. I'll say to everybody, you all want to go to heaven, but you really like it here. And guess how we know that? Because the pharmaceutical companies are worth trillions for a reason. We like this world. And in a Christian sense, yes, but in a Christian sense, we know that as you said, our citizenship is not here. We live it out here, but we live it for the citizenship that is to come fully, with Christ. And he is right. Persevering is hard. I just was visiting some in a nursing home, and especially we hear more of these words of memory care, and it's tough to watch people try to keep faith when they're all different. they're alone, the chronic diseases and so forth. I mean, I can see Screwtape's point of wanting to beat us down, and that's why we need community. We need especially religious community, but we need community. We need to constantly be reminded, as you said, where our citizenship is. Do I live for this life, or do I live for the next and live it fully, happily, and try to joyfully in this life? And obviously, Screwtape wants to pervert that and make this world the end. Let us get some prosperity so I get attached more and more and more. Um, and that's why in the scriptures, the more prosperous we are, the more we even have to work harder to be the poverty of spirit, and that is hard, as it says in the scriptures. It is hard for a rich man to enter into heaven. It's not impossible, but I can understand. I understand what he's saying.
And he goes further down the example of earthly attachment when he says, look, one of our greatest successes is achieved when we convince them, and this is nowhere more true in the political realm. When we convince them that they can actually create heaven on earth through the advancement of science or education or psychology or political action, and that through human government that we can actually create heaven here. And again and again, you look at that and you say, well, but shouldn't we be trying to improve things here? Yes, yes, of course we should. That's not where he goes, is to take that to an extreme so that in fact it becomes our whole purpose, that creating the utopia that heaven will be and that is not achievable on earth, uh, that becomes our focus. We're so attached that in in some way we are trying to achieve the heavenly uh, in ways that we cannot, and wind up winding being destructive in the process, not only to ourselves but to other people as well. That utopian urge, so far in the history of the world, has never ended well when it has been tried. So yeah, it's just very interesting the way he does. It talks about the attachments, and as you said, death. You mentioned this being our prime enemy. Well, outside of the death and resurrection of Christ, death is the enemy. Uh, New Testament and Old Testament scriptures and poetry deal with that. Uh, Death no longer has a sting. But why? Well, because it's been conquered, not because it's no longer an enemy, but it's no longer the primary enemy. But Screwtape wants to keep it there. He wants to keep its primacy even among Christians. That and you're bringing up the pharmaceutical industry, and our whole medical complex is so apt because Christians will say that, to extend the quote that you gave, yeah, yeah, I want to go to heaven, but I don't want to go today, right? Um, and it's funny, but only because it's true, and it's a dark humor there. Um, uh, we should be ready to go today. That doesn't mean we want to just throw this life away. As long as God has a purpose for us, He'll keep us here, and we should be rather content with that. But yeah, we cling, we fight tooth and nail for that next moment of life, when the some of the most beautiful things that I have seen among people that I consider to be saints, little s, uh, is an older believer calmly and with joy approaching death and knowing it's coming, for them, and living life joyfully right up until the end. And that's really where we should be. And boy, Screwtape, he doesn't want us getting anywhere near that. He wants us so attached to this world that we forget we have a purpose elsewhere.
And something that came to mind is, the, you know, to want, we hear so much now about chronic illnesses and we need to be healthier. And, and if those who believe, and I'm not saying I don't, I just don't want to speak for everybody that, you know, how does it benefit the pharmaceutical companies to keep us chronically ill? Because it's worth a lot of money. They don't necessarily want us to die right away because they want to keep making money. You see how, it's not to go down that rabbit hole, but
Mm-hmm.
the but you look at where all the money goes for, they say, for research. We think, we think it's for cancer, but the little I've known, it's to be youthful in some ways, how we look. And I knew a wise older man who was healthy. He lived, but he goes, he says, I try to live a healthy life, not so I can live longer. He goes, I want to live a healthy life because I want to be able to have, and he said something like a healthy death, but he meant it as I live a healthy life so I want to be attached to Christ. And so that when my body does break down or something, I won't forget my goal was ultimately to have a healthy spirit, a
Mm-hmm.
healthy relationship, with Christ. And for the Christian, it's not about running to death; it's running to Christ. And it's something else that came to mind that I think a lot of the viewers might really like is, someone who's afraid to die will not be somebody who you want in a foxhole. Somebody who's afraid to die means they're going to do whatever they can to live. They'll compromise anything, they'll compromise any person. And and I remember that being very powerful, especially when I look at the early Christians who were martyred, who really, and even in this life, it's like it's a really thought provoking letter to read and to even reread with one's own personal life, to see, where do I fall on this, and where is Screwtape trying to compromise my health, most of spirit, of my relationship with Christ. So I found it enlightening.
It very much is. Well, folks, I hope this has been enlightening for you as well as it has for us. Lewis just always leaves us so much to chew on. So until next week, we hope that you will ponder your attachment to this world and this life in much the same way that I'm convicted to do so in my own. And while you do, light something you like. We'll see you next week.